Finance Committee, and again, I want to reiterate, each loan has its own loan requirements. And it's real important to understand those as we look and move forward, because the revenue requirements that are built into it, the debt coverage requirements that we must maintain, otherwise we're out of compliance with the bank loans. Now, just as understanding the funding sources for these individual loans, the BBVA loan, 1/3 comes out of operations, 2/3 comes out of expansion funds, because some of that debt was refunding loans for infrastructure that's built out of this expansion fund. Except for Jenny Lynn, remember we're taking property tax money to pay that off until it's paid off, and then what we'll be looking at moving forward is once they start generating new connections, that money goes back to pay back that loan. The Stockton East Water, that comes out of operating funds. The Umpqua side funds.
Well, excuse me, Jeff. So our hydro revenues, you had estimated at 75,000 off of Hogan.
Yeah.
So that comes, that almost, but not quite pays, or at least the revenue from that checks off.
I think isn't the power out of Hogan is through MID?
Yes.
And I think it's kind of a push, isn't it? It's not a, do we profit 75?
Yes, and we generally get between 75 and 130, 150,000, 150,000 on good years. So we do profit from that. That's after we pay our share of expenses. So we have a cost share agreement with MID on the expense side, and then this is the net of that. Director Adam?
I had a question on the Wallace loan. Would there be any benefit to refinancing that one? It does appear as though the interest over the life of that loan is going to be quite substantial compared to the principal.
I'd have to really get into that, but refinancing a loan of that low magnitude, 120,000, I don't think you're going to experience any cost savings over time.
Or is there a way of paying it off quicker to save part of that 43,000 in interest charges over that small amount?
We can look at that if funds are available.
I'd look at that as part of the budget.
That's part of the budget discussion.
To me, it doesn't make sense either.
Yeah.
And, well, we have had times where we've paid off loans early over the last 3 or 4 years, but only when we have funds available. So that's something we have to take a look at. We will look at that in the upcoming budget discussions. The PERS side fund, that's basically coming out of operations. You'll see that. You won't see a separate line item for that in the budget, because we pay for it out of salaries and benefits, because it was just shifting. It wasn't salaries, it wasn't benefit costs previously. That's where we pay for it now, because it's paying for the current PERS obligation of current employees. So we list it as a benefit cost. R&R funds, the debt service there have to come from R&R rates. The operation headquarters comes from unallocated interest in the interest reserve fund. And again, once we get to the principal side, it'll be coming out of our operating budget, funds that are freed up from our BBVA loan.
Just to clarify, we're paying interest only, but we're paying the interest back to the accounts we borrowed it from.
That is correct.
We're not paying it to some outside entity.
I appreciate the clarification.
Does that make sense?
Brilliant.
Okay. We borrowed this money internally
Oh, okay.
from funds that
Gotcha.
we had
Reserve
no
funds.
anticipated needs for it.
Gotcha.
So when we pay the interest to them at 2.5% interest, it goes towards those funds,
Okay.
generally expansion funds. And so they're actually getting 2.5% interest, where a number of the other funds have lower interest, because that's
Yeah, we're paying them back better than we could.
Yeah. Okay.
the back-on loan. As Director Mills alluded to, we make quarterly payments, and the Wallace loan comes out of our operating. That's a sewer loan for sewer services. So if we pay that back in the future, or this year, it would have to come out of our sewer funds, not out of water funds. So we'd have to have sufficient funds in the sewer side.
Well, we just happen to have that big sewer loan sitting in CDARS.
But it's specific to
Sewer.
R&R.
Oh, you're right.
To the R&R, that is correct.
Yeah.
Any questions at this point on our debt? And I know I've gone into great detail, but since 3 of your board members were not here during the budget process, I thought this was would be helpful to you understand how we got to today. This is the expenditure summary, basically our budget for 14-15. We break it out into salary and benefits, service and supplies, capital outlay, and debt service. Basically, our operating budget, O&M, is $14.5 million. We have $220,000 set aside for capital outlay, vehicles and equipment under $50,000. As you can see, that's significantly less than the prior year. We had to balance our budget. And debt service, $2.4 million, that went up because of the R&R loan. So we have a budget of $17,129,373. Of the capital outlay, I wanted to identify the things that we were looking for. We had 4 trucks at $110,000, state upgrades at $50,000, PRV upgrades at $10,000, guard valve replacement $10,000, and lift station upgrades in $40,000. This is all in Bill Purley's utilities department. And these are kind of guidelines. If something happens during the year where he says, you know what, I've got to have money to do this, and shift around my priorities because things change. Just as what happened last week, he called me up, he said, Jeff, I need to replace a PRV down in the Jenny Lynn area for $35,000. What can I do? So he looked around, he says, you know what, I know I've encumbered my SCADA funds, I've got other things that we've done. I'm going to take money from my lift station upgrades and focus on this PRV because we had to do it.
And where was that PRV?
Jenny Lynn area.
Jenny Lynn.
I noticed in the budget review in the committee that there were some items that were not used, even though they were budgeted for. And
Yeah.
that's along the lines of what you're talking about here.
Exactly. And remember, this is only a snapshot through December 31. A number of times what we tend to do is if we know we have some high-ticket items that may be able to defer to the second part of the fiscal year, we wait till we look at mid-year and see where we are on that, because it may require us to defer those till the following fiscal year or rebudget them.
And identifying the life cycle of a big ticket item would be important as well as we look at a budget.
Yes. This is a breakdown of the expenses by department and comparing to the prior year. There's a couple of changes that you can see is that general management went down $418,000, non-departmental went up. That's because we shifted some costs, again, out of general management into non-departmental. Deja vu all over again, you and Yogi. Not Yogi Bear, Yogi.
Hey, boo-boo.
Utility services went down. Some of that is because we cut into their capital outlay budget. But a number of the decreases, again, were the reduction in benefit costs due to employees picking up their 4% share. And that's significant because if you go back here, if you look at salary and benefits, decreased $232,000. That's on top of the PERS increase of 1%, the medical costs increase, if there are any step increases for people. So we did have a significant savings with the employees picking up their share of PERS costs. That's the top line of the chart you see there. So again, that was based on the employees picking up their full share now.
Okay. Why did the board of directors get an increase of $49,000?
Election.
For the election costs.
Oh,
Because
okay,
we don't
okay.
budget election costs on an annual basis, only on an as-needed basis.
You didn't get your check?
Oh, I get the 9,552, yeah.
Any questions on this? So when I combine the revenues and the expenditures, which is in the middle column, revenues on top, expenditures on the bottom, we had a net surplus at the end of the budget process of a shade over $4,000. Basically a balanced budget. We had to trim a lot to get down to that balanced budget. Any questions on how we came to this budget? Okay. Now, this is where we get a little bit of math a little bit of psyche, a little bit of, this is where I think we're going to be. We take a look at current, the first 6 months of projections. We look at moving forward on salaries and benefits. We take a look at positions that have been empty that we now will projected are going to be filled, and we come up with our year-end projections, and that's what this is a projection. We're basically going to be, on our expenses, we're going to be about $67,000 over. We're going to have salary and benefit savings because we've had a number of vacant positions that allowed us to have those savings. Service and supplies are a little bit over because some of our costs and that we didn't anticipate, or just costs tend to be more than what we're budgeted. And then also, we're looking at adding to the budget $73,000 for some capital projects, capital expenditures, and I'll be getting to that in just a second. That's the budget adjustment. So when you really take a look at it overall on the operations side, without the budget adjustment, the higher expenditures, we're basically on target. The capital outlay projects that we're looking to fund, 2 of them are in Bill's department, and one of them is in my department for some servers, and I'll get into that in just a second. Here's a breakdown by department of year-end projections. Board of Directors is going to be under budget, and this is where I'm projecting $40,000 for the elections, because again, haven't heard back from the county. But remember, we had 4 board seats this past year, and we'll get charged accordingly. General management is going to be under budget. Engineering and tech will be over budget. Part of that is because we've had a number of projects that we didn't anticipate that we've had to pay for some studies on. Blake and Mill Pond was one, and some of these others that when we have the initial, the environmental, the biological, and some of these studies, that's where it comes out of. Admin services is going to be under budget. Utility services is over budget. And again, when you do budgets, you give it your best estimate on where you think you're going to be. And finally, water resources is under budget. We just haven't, the position's been vacant for most of the year, and we just haven't been able to get to a number of these projects because we haven't had the body. The other part of it is on that is we've deferred moving on the urban water management plan, which is $60,000 because DWR isn't going to have the guidelines ready till this summertime. So we can't move forward on that until we get the guidelines. And this is the 2015 urban water management plan that won't be due until sometime in 2016. And this is just a summary of the revenues. So overall, we're going to, again, in my mind, we're at a push. Now, I did get some initial property tax numbers this morning. They sent me a fax as to what we received. I haven't had a chance to analyze them because historically we get 3 property tax distributions. One in February from the December collections, one in May and June from the April collections, and again a true up in August. So I've got to go back, I want to go back and look historically, kind of get a feel for what the percentages are and move forward. But from my initial review, we're going to be at least at budget. Possibly we'll get more than we anticipated on the property taxes. So overall, at this point, I don't see any need to adjust the budget other than the 3 capital outlay projects that we're looking at. And if you look at page 4 of the staff report, the agenda item, we're requesting $60,500 for capital outlay. This includes, and the details listed on page 2, $32,000 for a 4,000-gallon water tank for Wilseyville Water System Service Area. And that includes the tank and installation, a Vertex aeration system for the West Point system at $9,000, and $19,005 for admin services for a purchase of a server that replaces 3 outdated servers, along with the associated software and exchange software. And these servers go back to 2008.
Who are we moving from?
We're taking it, the money will be coming from property taxes, special project fund.
No. What companies or, you're saying we're getting rid of, we're changing servers.
These are computer servers.
Right.
Okay?
Uh-huh.
Not internet suppliers.
Okay.
It's
Yeah, we're
actually
buying
hardware.
replacement servers.
Okay.
It's equipment.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about that now?
We can take it one at a time if you'd like. Anything, questions on the tank or the aeration system?
Well, they weren't in the budget for one thing, and these are fairly expensive. The one is 32,000, is a fairly expensive capital improvement project. You'd think that that would have been in the CIP somewhere. Or did something happen to the tank that we suddenly came up with a need?
Actually, there's 2 issues here. One is the aeration system, and that is a result of the low water in the regulator and the odor issues we've had in West Point, and we're looking to, and that was brought on by the drought. So the we're hoping to, Bill had put in some aeration system over this last year, and he wants to do more. That's the $9,000. The Wilseyville tank, that is an offshoot of what we've identified with circulation issues because of reduced water demand based on the transmission system we replaced several years ago, and the reduced water production. We've reduced water production in that West Point plant by 25%. So along with that, we also have circulation issues, and we want to be able to provide a holding tank out in the Wilseyville area to provide some flexibility in managing the system. So a lot of this has to do with 2 recent events, the drought and the construction project. I don't think we foresaw a 25% reduction in water production by replacing one large transmission line and a tank. And that's all due to reducing water losses.
It's a big issue up there regarding taste and odor.
Right.
I mean, you hit them with new rate increases, and then most of them, and I can say most, will not drink the water. Some of them won't even give it to their pets. They buy bottled water. And the aeration system that was kind of an emergency fix was not the system that was needed, but yet it was available and it did just what it did. It provided emergency situation. This Vertex aeration system is one designed for long-term use to address the issue for lake circulation, water quality enhancement, and all those kind of things. And that's actually one heck of a good price, believe it or not. But my question is a 4,000-gallon water tank when you can go buy a plastic one over here, a 5,300-gallon tank for $2,800. Obviously, this is
also installation. I think
Yeah.
you gotta look at the total project. I
Yeah.
believe this is a total project cost.
Yes.
I assume that tank probably has to be metal. It's maybe under pressure and all of those kind of issues that take it out of the Tractor Supply Company's
Yes.
$2,800. Yeah. So
Bill worked his magic and pen, got bids on this, and this is what he came up with. And it's designed to what he specifically sees as a need for that area.
Madam
Yes.
President, just to note, I know that taste and odor issues certainly were a huge issue
Right.
this summer with the, particularly the algae issues at the regulated reservoir. It's my understanding those issues have been addressed, and as of right now, and since with the fall months, we haven't had that issue, but we anticipate that we could have challenges again this summer with, again, continuing drought, and that affects, of course, the amount of inflow into the reservoir, and it's aeration. So this is really, and a lot of this is in response to what we heard from the community up there, and their big concern coming into another year of drought. We want to get ahead of that by doing this now and having these things in place.
Any more questions on the proposed budget adjustment?
The server issue, I don't think we budgeted for server replacement this year.
No, we did not, and I can explain that if you'd like.
Now, who decided the server need and who did the research on it?
John Gomes is our IT individual, administrator. He approached me before budget year 14-15, saying it needed to be replaced. He approached the prior year and said we need to get these replaced, but there was no money in the budget. When we did this budget, I informed him that after year-end close, or after the audit, we would go back and see if we had some available funds to be able to use to fund this purchase. And that usually happens in October, November, when we close out the audit year. And at that particular point in time, unfortunately, there were no funds available for this, but it's critical need now. So I was hoping to use surplus from the prior year to pay for this project. Now we need to actually move money out of a special project fund for this project.
So this is servers for more than just email. It does do some extensive administrative work.
Yes, it does.
And what level of architecture are you wanting to use?
I'm not, Director Mills, I'm not an IT individual. I trust my IT administrator who's worked on this.
Okay. Usually these have about a 3 to 5 year life cycle, so I'd like to see some kind of a future budget allocation set aside every year, so when we're in this, we don't come at the last minute and say we need it, and then we're putting it off and we still need it. So
I would like to do that myself. We do have money set aside for PC and laptop replacement, but obviously servers are rather expensive, and that'll be part of the discussion for a 15-16 budget.
And where we can go virtual or hosted servers, I mean, even in large corporations, we were using virtual hosted or even the cloud, depending upon what we were using it for. So I would hope that we would not just be out there buying a real high-tech server simply because we haven't explored the needs for the virtual side of it that could be free. So
We will look at that.
thank you.
So what what's staff asking, that we amend the fiscal year operating budget with these 3 adjustments? Is that,
Yes, but there's a little bit more here.
okay.
And I'll move faster. I know Director Davidson, this is his favorite topic, talking about budget numbers.
It's actually been interesting today.
Probably the first time in 7 years.
I'm still awake.
I'll defer comment on that one. Personnel allocation. There's times during the year we take a look at staffing requirements, the needs in one department versus another. Obviously, engineering department needs resources. We all aware of that. We moved one body, a senior engineering tech from admin to the engineering department earlier. We just want to confirm that because we have to have your board approve a resolution adopting the personnel allocation. We want to move one position from utilities. We're going to transfer that over to engineering as an engineering tech, and that'll be an internal recruitment. And we reclassified one accounting admin service position. That's already happened. We're basically asking you to approve that retroactively, but there is no change in our FTE count.
So isn't it the general manager's prerogative, as long as we don't go into adding bodies to shuffle the deck? I mean, is this a necessity to come to the board? Because I'm getting concerned that we're micromanaging here.
This was at the request of HR that we do this, and we codify this. And I'm only spending a few minutes on this, so
Okay.
versus the rest of it.
Well, I won't let you spend 3 then if you don't want to.
Yeah, go ahead. So it's in the district's best interest to hire these folks as personnel rather than bring folks in as consultants or other types of work arrangements where we're not incurring all the benefits and all the other stuff. And I see you look over it, General Manager.
Well, this is
No,
a
this-
sidebar conversation we should probably have because there's a number of issues dealing with MOUs and replacing current employees. And I don't really want to get into all the nuances of it, but we do look at any opportunities we have.
And this one, this is really just using the existing authorization, but reallocating one of those positions. Well, in memorializing one that had already been done, but it's not adding additional positions or eliminating.
Right.
When you're saying that you're moving somebody from utilities, to me, in my background, it says, well, did we really need them anyway in that position, or we need somebody more importantly somewhere else? Is there a dollar value difference that is involved here, and if so, what is that?
Are you
cost
talking
difference?
the incremental increase
When you're
between
making-
his current,
when
the
you're
current
making-
position and that?
Yeah, you're making a change from these positions, here's the dollars that they were costing, and now you're gonna be in these positions. What is the differential between those changes?
At this particular point in time, we don't have a particular individual who will move over in this position, so I can't give you an exact dollar amount. However, that being said, the ranges of the positions the individuals who will be interested in this position, it's within spitting range of the engineering tech. It's really inconsequential when it comes to the overall budget.
So should,
And they're funded positions, right?
It's a funded position,
Yeah, it was funded in our last budget. We just haven't filled it.
right.
but should we cut back on CIP project speed that we're going at right now? Are we going to need these kind of resources there, or is this something that we need to look at as we look at our next budget as to how we staff to the project speed that we work?
Getting down to be very direct, engineering is drowning right now.
Yeah.
They don't even have the resources to do the work that's not related to capital R&R. There's a number of,
Oh, I'm sorry, Jeff, that's exactly why we're advertising the assistant engineer position right now, and this is trying to find a creative way to provide additional resources for engineering without increasing the budget, and it really gets down, I mean, you know, it really gets down to priority, trying to find some resources to support that, and it seems to me that was pretty obvious early on that having a more you know, robust functioning engineering unit within this agency was a very high priority, and we still got a ways to go to get there.
and another reason for this as well is with the impending retirement of Larry Diamond, there's a number of issues that he deals with, land issues and such, that are handled by himself and some members in the existing senior engineering tech. We're going to be shifting some of that workload on time. And so, again, we're not taking on additional work. We're actually reallocating duties at this particular point. So we're trying to get ahead of the curve when we're looking at upcoming retirements.
Sounds like it's a built-in succession plan as well.
That's our goal.
Good.
So, now I want to wrap this up because we spent a lot of time on the operating budget, and I know we've talked CIPs to death, both in the engineering committee and in the finance committee, and I believe everybody other than Director Ratterman attended all those. Here's for the water projects, and this includes the Flying Acres water system. We budgeted $7.3 million for this fiscal year. $2 million of that was for Flying Acres, and as you can see, the funding on the far right side coming from the assessment district. That's the money collected from the property owners. So I'm really looking at that as something completely separate from the others, but it did affect our workload. The Redwood tank replacement, that's a FEMA grant. We're 75%, we're 25%, they're 75%. We're still working on some issues with the state to be able to move forward on that project. The Ebbets Pass pipeline replacement project, we budgeted $3.5 million. That's an ongoing project. Tank management project, you can see we budgeted $175,000. Right now it's $21. Charles Palmer, our district engineer, and the engineering committee identified a program that he'd like to see set aside money on an annual basis to update and repaint, not remodel, but repaint, recoat, and update and repair our tanks to keep them in good working condition versus running them to fail. The Techite water line replacement, that's on hold. You can see we haven't spent any money on that this year. We have spent a little bit of money, initial money on Reach 1, and the plan is once we get Reach 3A into the construction side to move that into the design phase. And Jenny Lynn AV transmission line, we're putting that off for now, and that's going to be done in a future year. That money was to be set aside for design purposes, not construction. And the money, some of it, the reserves, you can see, that's our 25% cost share for the Redwood tank. The bulk of it's coming from R&R, whether it's the loan proceeds or the actual rates that are coming in. It's $370,000 is the FEMA portion of the Redwood tank. And that's not the entire amount of the project. It's what we anticipated in 14-15. However, as I mentioned, they're running into easement issues with the state park, so we're trying to work through that at this point. On the wastewater projects, we had $2.3 million worth of projects scheduled for 14-15. That's out of a total project cost of just under $4 million. When you look at the cost flow, I actually, there's a mistake there. We have not spent $1.2 million on the Copper Cove plant yet, but we anticipate spending that full amount by year end. I'm sorry, these numbers weren't updated, but the reclaim plant, we've spent a little bit of money on that. That was in Bill, some of his permitting. Your board approved the purchase of a $50,000 pump, I believe, for this to move forward on. We haven't spent any, the West Point consolidation project, we have spent $130,000 to date. We'd like to move forward. We've applied for a grant through SRF to take that to construction. That is a grant-funded project. Haven't done anything on any of the other projects to date at this particular point in time. They're basically on hold until we actually get a final cost on Lift Station 22 to see where we are. The next project that we're going to be moving forward on is the bypass in Copper Cove. And that wraps up my discussion on the 14-15 budget, and then I want to talk about next year's budget, and then we'll go to the resolutions for the budget adjustment and for the personnel allocation. And the first one is, we always start with goals set by directors. And we're going to be moving forward on this because I know we've had ongoing discussions, obviously regarding the projects that we want. And we've started that discussion both in the Finance Committee and Engineering Committee. There's some ongoing work, and we've kind of set out internally a process that we'd like to follow, and I'd like Dave to jump in here if you wouldn't mind.
Sure, and this really does go to the issue, which I know is really important the board's mind right now is, you know, what do we need in the way of rates to be able to fund the work that we really need to get done, and is there any opportunity to provide some relief from those rate increases to our ratepayers? And so the way we are committed to provide that to the board and present that question to make a decision on is through our committees and our board meetings. And the schedule will really be in March is where we're going to get the work done. And we've got a engineering committee on the 10th. We'll bring to that committee all the information on how projects have been evaluated, basically what are the compelling reasons within the evaluation that we would have set those as high priority projects, and really how time sensitive are these, and what are the opportunities to delay some of these projects, and what do we really need to do within the next 3 years, and what can be pushed out farther. That's going to be brought to the engineering committee. On the 11th, we have a board meeting after that, so we'll bring whatever information we can coming out of the engineering committee and discuss that at the board, this next board meeting on the 11th. Again, we'll go through those projects again with the full board. We're going to, how did we evaluate them, the basis for evaluation, and what really are the most time-sensitive, important projects. Again, with the underlying goal of continue to provide safe, reliable service for our customers, and not be in a position where we have to do these projects as an emergency response. There's a lot more cost and complexity and all of that. So that'll be on the 11th. Following that, on the 17th, we've got a finance committee meeting. We will again work through. Jeff is developing information from the finance committee on what are the cash flow implications coming into the next budget year for us to be able to finance that level of effort, and to give some options for the committee and then ultimately the board to look at what if we, what would it look like at different levels of project implementation. Again, that's going to be based on that schedule of projects and opportunities to delay some of the work that come to the engineering committee and then the full board. Then with that in hand, that direction from the finance committee will come to the full board on the 25th, and we will ask the board to consider the project, the list of R&R projects, to consider that, to basically to give a blessing that these are the projects and the timelines and the effort that we want to perform coming into the next fiscal year, and also 2 years after that. And obviously, we'll revisit this on an annual basis. But basically, so you know the projects, the R&R projects that we're working on, with the rate fund, the funds from the rate increases, you know exactly what those are, you know exactly why you're doing them, and the board believes that those are high priority deserving projects for us to work on. Then as well as part of that, knowing what a project list is to perform and looking at all the financial implications of performing that work, we want to give the board the opportunity to make a decision on what do we need to do in the way of doing some suspension of the rates coming into this fall to provide relief. And that, again, is something we're working up. What would it look like if we don't have the additional rate increase and we had to live with what we've got and try to get the projects done? How would we order those projects? What would we do now? What would we push out? And what would the implications be? Bottom line, I want to bring a recommended list of projects that I can say, I think we, this is realistic. We can actually accomplish this with our staff and our resources. And two, this is going to keep us on track so that we can continue to provide safe, reliable service. I would never want to recommend to take a course of action that takes on more risk than would be justified and put us in a position of potential liabilities. But I want to give solid information to the board and a solid recommendation, and so that's what we will be coming to you with. And so the issue, that's a lot, but the issue of what to do on rates on R&R will be, I believe, will be before the board by the March 25th meeting to consider.
I think it's important to understand that, the feedback that I'm getting and the way that I look at this is that we are, in essence, funding these 30 and 40-year life cycle projects on the backs of ratepayers today and 5 to 7 years out max. I think that we need to be thinking in a longer term. The value of this project is 40 years. The financing should somehow fit that, or if not, to be able to set aside money in advance so that we're kind of getting ahead of the cycle so we don't keep repeating this over and over again. So I think that it's very important that we understand that it's the current ratepayer that's paying for the upgrades to these systems that are going to benefit people 30 and 40 years down the road in some cases.
In some cases. And I agree when you're looking at some of the pipeline projects. Some of the other assets that we have is much shorter life expectancy. And so we have to take that into account. It's a balance. And you also have to take a look at funding opportunities and what's the best way, because when you go out to longer debt, you then have to issue bonds. You have to go out and get credit ratings through S&P and take a look at the whole thing. So there are a multitude of variables that we can discuss.
That's what I would like to do. And when we're looking at trenching, the cost of the major cost of the project is the trench. It isn't the pipe. So whether we put one pipe in a ground or two or three or four, it really becomes nothing at some point. So I also would like to look at Reach 1 and even Reach 3A to some degree and say, is one pipe an okay idea, or should we be looking at 2 or 3 or 4 for future expansion or other options that we might play with down the road?
Our engineer has already looked, well, he's working on the size of pipe we're putting in, because that has been a question. The thing that we're talking about also is we want to make sure that we are in compliance and safety is, our first priority, so that I understand what you're saying, Jeff, and
Certainly.
Jeff, are you going to make a comment? He's smiling. He's thinking about how to word this to where he won't hurt feelings. Well, actually, no, he doesn't care about feelings.
Just let it.
You hurt mine earlier when you said I was back here in 1970 when they built Hogan Dam. But I let that go. No, I just, all those things are important, and I'm all for taking a look at what we can actually accomplish. I think that we definitely need to prioritize the list. There are issues with using ratepayer money for expansion. We're not allowed to do it. Plain and simple. It is, unfortunately, we don't have any form of growth going on in the county where we can, sometimes you can do a cost share between the two. Say this is a growth-related project, or this is something that we can pay for with rates, but we can't typically do it. Those are good conversations to have, but the law doesn't allow us to prepare for expansion on the backs of existing ratepayers. And so that's just one of the limitations that we're up against. But certainly, I think that our former general manager's list was too robust, and I think our board was anxious to take advantage of low interest rates, low construction costs, a lot of competitive bidding, and do as much as possible. And I still think that should be our method, because all we'll do is kick these projects down the road. And so it's going to be a balancing act, there's no question, but I look forward to the prioritized list, and then really the how we can leverage the money that we're collecting to benefit the existing ratepayers the most. Because on the other hand, you don't want to kick the can down the road to future generations on things that we should be fixing today. So it's going to be a hell of a balancing act. It was when we were discussing it last time. It's a difficult process.
I think it's a great idea to look at these projects, and I'm very, very glad that we're doing that. We do have a 3-year rate hike. 2 of those years have already happened. We've already raised the rates twice, a jump up, and maybe looking at that third year to see, is that necessary right now? Is it absolutely necessary? And that may be maybe something that we can look at. We have been hearing a lot about the rates from our ratepayers since the rate hike. And if that's, and looking at it at a different point in time, we're 2-3 years down the road from when that happened, and that would be if it is possible, if these projects can be pushed out and us not be hurt by it, I think that is a plausible decision that should be looked at.
Because they tried, when we went out for the rate hearings, and, you were all there, and you heard the discussion, are these really necessary? And as Jeff mentioned, and, we all know, some of these things can be put off, and some of them we don't even need, so that it's a real thorough look at the rate increase and the projects to see if they're,
And I've got a couple of comments too. I think that it's all about timing in a lot of ways too. And I don't know how long this drought grant money is going to be available. So I think part of our consideration is going to be the timing of, increased storage capacity, which may benefit us down the road in, looking at any sort of rate increase or transfer, any of that stuff by having the storage. Using that water right by increasing storage. And so I think that's one issue with that. I also want to add, Dave, that I had a specific request to look at a $5 reduction in both water and wastewater. And so I didn't hear that happening. I'm sure that you've got the notes on that, but I just want to, come out and let it be known. I want to be able to evaluate what a $5 reduction is going to do. I think, that's great. That's I hope it happens. But what we really need is the list of things that we have to build. Right.
And the money that we have to do that. And if you want to compare it, were we just going to take projects off the must-do list to get to the $5 reduction?
I mean, you have to kind of get the project prioritized, the things that we could accomplish, and then review the money that we anticipate to come in, hope it comes in, and then if there's the ability to make a reduction or not do the increase, then I think that's the appropriate way to go about it. But to set a financial goal without setting a infrastructure goal, you know, I just don't see how we do that first.
Right, no, I agree, but, you know, I'm the kind of guy that I want all the information first before I make a decision, and some of that's related and some of it's kind of unrelated.
I want to put it for the record, since Dana's finally here and writing down, I'd like to see a $10 reduction in all of our rates.
Do we have 15? Have it. But one of the last things I want to make a comment on is, as we look at projects like, all right, the 3A pipeline replacement. I don't know how many board members are exposed to this inline hydro opportunities and the revenues,
exposed to it.
the revenues that come from that. So as we look at some of our system that has that elevational pressure, you know, characteristics to them, I think that as Director Mills had talked about some futuristic thinking here, I would suggest that we look at that 3A pipeline project that's on the very near future and evaluate opportunities to build it in such a way that it would be most user-friendly to come in and insert inline hydro facilities to that if and when the board decides to make that move. I participated in Amador Water Agency's, you know, Matt from Inline, his presentation last week. And that's some significant revenue generation coming from, you know, those opportunities. I know Aqua's got an inline hydro symposium, a workshop planned for, I think it's late March or something. I just saw it yesterday. And so I have a conflict. I will not be able to make that Aqua meeting on that date. Anyway, that's, in my mind, that's the futuristic thinking of not using repair money issues and, you know, being illegal, so to speak, or the legalities of that, but at the same time, what adjustments that we can make to, you know, to create that.
Well, Terry,
Yeah,
just to let
we're-
you know, we've had a tunnel tap ad hoc committee here for at least the last couple of years, looking into those exact same things and exploring those ideas, so that's not
Okay.
that new to the, you know, new of ideas that are, I think we just got rid of that ad hoc committee this year.
So part of that, the learning process or the information that you gather from that went into the 3A pipeline
Okay,
replacement?
well, yeah, we're really, we're off,
I think
we're
3A
off right
pumping
now.
uphill.
Yeah, okay,
Thank you, ma'am.
okay, so,
Yes,
That-
I hear all the comments, and as we move forward, we're taking them into consideration.
Okay, right.
What I want to do is just really quickly go over how we're looking at 15-16 budget year. Basically, departments submit their budget.
I thought, oh, okay, I thought you were,
Yes, the very second to last slide.
oh, okay, sorry.
Basically, departments will submit their request to admin services, myself and Eddie and others will review them. Staffing levels, proposed staffing levels, any changes, obviously reviewed by HR and general manager as final say-so. We draft, admin services drafts the proposed budget. It goes to the GM for review and revised, then it goes to the finance committee for their review and changes and adjustments, and then their final blessing to take it to the full board. What we're looking at is June 11th, that's a Thursday, that's a tentative date of when we're gonna have a board workshop on the budget, and then we have to adopt that budget by no later than June 30th. Of this fiscal year, which is basically, I believe that we go to the last meeting in June, which I believe is the 24th, for adoption.
Right.
And with that, if there are no more questions and comments, I'd like to request the board adopt 2 resolutions.
Right.
Make a motion on the resolution amending the fiscal year 2014-15 operating budget.
Second.
Oh, thank you. Public comment on the second motion, adopting resolution, amending the,
The first one.
no, okay, you amended the operating budget. Okay. Public comment.
I'm sorry.
I don't know if you heard, but there's quite a few abandoned houses in District 5. Are you counting on tax revenue of increase? There's a big decrease of county funds coming in soon as they have to notify all the good folks about FEMA bills, but they never bothered to notify them they're in a FEMA. And all those folks under Prop 8, they will be eligible for decreasing of their property tax value. That's one thing. So maybe it's hopeful. I hope you do, because I love to see my property value goes up. The other thing is that in here, internal operation headquarters, does that mean that this building? Yes. Okay. I know the amount that loan is for like 3 million, and how much is how much you have to pay a year? What was the amount that you have to pay interest, or how much on a principal and so on? You're paying interest right now, nothing toward the principal. I didn't see the dollar figures, and maybe you can show it to me later.
Is it 75?
That's 75.
75,000,
75,000 a year?
yeah.
Okay.
Do you know who we're paying it to, right?
Umka, who you loaning it to?
No,
To ourselves.
To you.
To ourselves.
Yeah, sure. I see my water rates. I'm gonna have to pay it.
no, it was an internal loan from expansion funds, so we're actually paying them back the interest, and then soon we'll be paying those accounts back the principal. So the end result will be a small gain in all of those expansion funds. So that's how it's being financed. It's not to an outside agency.
I don't wanna go into detail how many square feet you got, how many personnel you have in this place, but that we can do later. The other one is that I don't know how much you're utilizing this beautiful building. It is a beautiful building. But as a taxpayer who pays out of front pocket, right pocket, or a back pocket, you know, as a taxpayer, I see COG over here, CCOG, paying full bore, highest rental to that building downtown. Maybe you guys somehow think about it, that invite those folks to come down here and pay you the rent. That would be a nice income. Is that old building that you used to be, is that sold?
No,
Is there any way you can get the money, how much property this district owns overall in the whole county, and how much income you get out of those properties?
It's,
I mean,
did
that would be a
have
nice
a-
little sum.
Okay. There was a reference to how much we made.
no, it's an
yeah,
interest-only loan for $75,000 for the first 5 years, and then at that point in time, other debt will be retired, and then it's time to start making, it'll be more money available to make the principal payments. And the idea of selling property, not a bad idea.
You be able to
Different,
go
different
ahead?
topic, different agenda
Yeah.
item.
Okay, well, it's money, that's why I'm asking, you know.
no, the whole point of that was not only that property, but also the property that they purchased 15, 20 years ago, that if there was a market for either of those, we would sell that, and it would be used to retire the debt of this facility. That was our intention all along with the financing of this thing.
And I'm sure someplace somebody can account for me, I don't want to take your time right now. All the properties that this organization owns, what's it doing? Is it costing you money? Does it bring money in? Maybe we can clear some of that stuff.
Last time we talked about it, we decided it wasn't the market, the current real estate market to be unloading property at that point in time. That was the last couple of years.
Okay.
That's changing a little bit.
Also, I want to bring it to your attention that the Federal Reserve's talking about increasing an interest rate, if you might heard about it. So if you made some switcheroos over here, that's wonderful, okay? But your interest rates are going up. That's all the different regional Federal Reserve agreeing to it. So that might you want to consider also. So once you get into detail, I'll probably have some more questions. And it's real nice debt service projection. That's wonderful. I wish I would be as talented as you folks are, or somebody is, to tell you what's going to happen in 2025.
Anything related to amending the fiscal 2014-15 operating budget?
Yes, you have debt service over here. On page
On the
218,
amendments?
it's a debt service,
page
250, and
five.
so on, going down.
On page
And it's
five.
wonderful, it's gonna go down.
Yeah.
It's not the agenda, it's not the,
Director Davidson, those debt
Thank you.
service schedules, in answering Mr. Ray's question, those debt service schedules are based on the loan documents themselves.
Right,
That's
but
why we know them
but
down to
what
the
would-
dollar for each year.
what was, the motion and the second was about changing the operating budget.
I'm open. Do I have any more public comment?
Just as a side note, it seems like going back to the first part, under expenditures, that the employees are now paying their full cost, and the agency's paying its proportionate cost. But it seems like everywhere we're seeing is costs are going up. And if you have employees, I don't know if they're unionized or not, but I'm sure if they are, they will be looking to have something to come across and help pay off that, what is it, 8% they're now paying? If they're SAIU, you can be darn sure it's gonna happen. So what I'm looking at is I see with what we have in the county of Calaveras is we see cost of services going up and services reduction. I don't know that it can happen in your agency because I would consider you a more important agency than Calaveras County, personally,
Thank you.
other than the tax collection.
We should get a plaque that says,
Get the benefit of from our assessor and auditor controller and treasurer tax collector, the three ladies that could run the county without needing a 5 board of supervisors. But anyway, that's my concern is, and what we're gonna see to include is, if you're seeing costs happen to you, we all on the outside are seeing costs happen to us, not just directly from you, but in the conglomerate of business. Everything's going up. I opened up my PG&E bill yesterday, 16 point something cents a kilowatt hour. And they're now offering me, well, we'll give you a tier 1 rate thing in such and such time and you operate any electricity such and such time. Oh, well, thank you a lot. I'm trying to go into agriculture where I'm gonna need electricity, so now I've gotta go out and look for some other means of electricity, generating my own, either solar or putting in something else to be able to operate my water system. So I find it that we're all being, well, I won't even say equally, unequally hit by costs. And somewhere, as the American people need to get it all under control, and I don't see that happening. My other thing on your medical cost is your medical cost, what's your medical plan under? What, is it Anthem Blue Cross or is it some other agency? And how does that relate to the thing that's hurting everybody is Obamacare? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, call for the vote on the first motion, resolution.
amending the operating budget.
We secure our health insurance through PERS Medical. And there are options available through Blue Cross, Blue Shield, and Kaiser. Based on the employee's selection. And as far as its effect on the national health care, I don't know at this particular point in time. I think we have the ability, that PERS has an excellent bargaining chip as to the number of employees that they cover.
And yes, our employees are unionized, SEIU, and I think part of the current MOU, it calls for the increase in the portions that they've paid over the last 3 years to get up to that full paying for their own benefits.
And
It's
they
already
have
been
2 more
negotiated and agreed to.
There are 2 more years under that 5-year agreement.
Okay. Let's vote.
Now, is everybody answered? Okay, I can call for the vote. All those in favor?
Yes.
Yes?
No.
No? 4 yes and 1 no. A motion adopting resolution